So I always attribute my own health issues with the toxic relationship with my father, who abused me, my siblings, and my mother mentally, physically, and emotionally. And so as a child, as I'm absorbing all of this traumatic information, it's going right into my subconscious mind and being hardwired in there. And so what happens is, as this trauma is hardwired in the subconscious mind and you grow up as an adult, that's when a lot of this trauma starts to manifest, whether it's in health issue, whether it's in dysfunctional relationship, whether it's in mental and emotional, like inability to function, or maybe it's a lack of abundance in money or career or job. All of this trauma has deep consequences for our lives as adults, and they manifest in these undesired patterns in our life. And so, growing up, living under this toxic environment because my father was so abusive mentally, emotionally, and physically, my siblings and I were so afraid of him that we never had any conversations with my father. So during any dining that we did as a family, we would keep quiet. We would not say a word. That dining table was absolute silence. So any issues that we might have had, at school or with friends, any issues that we had mentally or emotionally, we never talked to our father about them because we were so afraid of him. He always judged us as not good enough, not worthy, always demeaning us and putting us down. So you can only imagine how toxic that relationship was and what kind of profound consequences that has for us as children and then as adults. And so we've been doing these one-on-one private sessions with many of our Facebook community members. And I'm telling you, these private sessions have been so profound. So profound. I mean, I think one session, the story was so deep that after the call, I started to sob. And my community co-leader, Jad, he had to console me because I could just feel the suffering and pain of that member. And because I'm an empath, I could feel it even more. But these sessions have been so profound, and I've been so inspired by the resilience, by the courage of our members to make that inner change. I've been so inspired by that. You have no idea. And so one of the biggest themes that we're seeing from these one-on-one sessions, other than loneliness and grief, is toxic relationships. So many of our members are telling us about the toxic relationships they had with their parents or their siblings as a child. And we're seeing how much that is affecting them as adults. And they're seeing so many undesired patterns in their life, whether the pattern comes out as being an alcoholic or whether it's a pattern of physical health issue. I mean, there's so many dysfunctional patterns that we're seeing because they were experiencing this incredible childhood trauma. And I could certainly relate to my members because I had my own childhood trauma. And so I want to know from you, in the spirit of collective healing, are you currently experiencing any toxic relationships in your life? If so, with whom and why? Is it a family member, a friend, a colleague? Leave your comments and answers below. So in this week's video, part 1, I want to address why we should never try to change toxic people in our lives, no matter how close they are, whether it's a parent, whether it's a sibling. We should never try to change their behavior. And then in next week's video, Toxic Relationships Part 2, I'm going to give you actual practical tips on how to manage and handle toxic people, along with a meditation that could help you manage toxic relationships in your life. So look out for those two videos next week. So the reason why I am so adamant that we never try to change the thinking and behavior of toxic people are for many reasons. But first and foremost is because most of the time when you try to change their thinking and behavior, they're not ready. You have to be ready for change. And so for a toxic person who's not ready for change and you're trying to give them good suggestions, advice to change your thinking and behavior, it's just going to backfire on you, because the toxic person is just going to only feel defensive. They're never going to take your suggestion and advice as if you're helping them, but they feel like they're being attacked. Because when you're not ready for change, you only get defensive. And so this is one of the main reasons why we should never try to change the thinking and behavior of toxic people, because most of the time we're just wasting our energy and time, and it's just going to backfire on us. And so, as the Buddha always says, when you change your own individual mind, you change the world. He says, don't ever worry about changing other people's mind. Only change your own mind, because as you change your internal individual mind, you have natural organic influence on others around you, and then those people around you will have an influence in other people, and then it becomes a domino effect. So as you change your own individual mind, you change the world. And so the second reason why we should never try to change toxic people in our lives is because we have to allow them to be on their soul's path. This is really important. We have to allow them to be on their own individual soul's path. It is not our job to know what their soul's path is. It is not our job to change their soul's path. That is not our job. The only job, as the Buddha said, is to change our own individual minds. And as we change our own minds, we change the world. Because really, their soul's path really belongs to the infinite wisdom, infinite intelligence of God and the universe. See, the universe has the much bigger picture of why these people are on their toxic journey. Because it's really the yin and yang. You can't have the light without the dark. You can't have the dark without the light. Not everybody on this physical plane can be awakened, can be lightened to their higher self. Not everybody can be that, because it's the yin and yang. It's the balancing, the harmony that the universe in its infinite wisdom is always trying to do. So even if we can't understand why their journey is the way it is, that's okay. That's okay. As Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now always says, we have to accept what is. What is. And so we allow toxic people to be on their soul's path because universe and God have the bigger picture, not us. And so the only thing that we should be focused on and concerned about is our own thoughts and feeling and our reaction to toxic situations. And we have full control over that. And so one of the wise Buddhist monks, Thich Nhat Hanh, always says, you're only affected by others because you allow them to affect you. You're only affected by others because you allow them to affect you. And so when we encounter a toxic relationship, especially with a close family member, let's say our mother or our parent, right? And our mother is demeaning us. She's criticizing us, saying, you are worthless. I have never wanted a child in my life, and she's spewing all this toxic things to you, well, how do you respond? You respond in a way where you do not get sucked up in her drama. What do I mean by not getting sucked up in her drama? What I'm saying is that normally when somebody says demeaning things like this to us, we'll respond in kind. We will reciprocate in kind, meaning that we will have a toxic response to what they're saying, right? That's a natural reaction. But what we're trying to do here is practice having an awareness of the awareness thoughts, having an awareness of our awareness. That is what we're trying to do. And what does that mean? It means that when there's a toxic situation, we want to pull our awareness back and just observe the situation as a third eye witness. We just want to observe it like we've got binoculars on, and we're just observing that situation as a third eye witness observer. And when we start to do that, we don't get sucked up in their drama. We're not responding and we're not reacting badly. See, you want to be reflective, not reactive. You want to become reflective and not reactive. So as you're wearing this binocular, which serves as your eyewitness observer, you're being reflective, not reactive. And that is the most important thing when we are in toxic relationships or when we're encountering toxic situations, because we don't want to become a participant of their drama. Because once we become a participant of this drama, that is when we start having negative feelings. We start becoming angry. We start having hatred. We start having stress. We start having resentment. All these things start to arise when we become a participant. And so once we start to become an observer, that is when those emotions can be managed. Those negative emotions can be managed and controlled. So that's the first thing, is to wear these binoculars as an eyewitness observer to the situation. So step one is to become reflective as opposed to reactive to the toxic situation by becoming an observer. And so then step two is to become again an observer to your thoughts. Because once you're in that toxic situation, you start having thoughts that arise that are becoming more reactive rather than reflective. So as you might have thoughts that my mom is toxic, or I hate my mom, why is my mom being so difficult? You want to become again an eyewitness observer with these binoculars on to your own thoughts. That is really, really important. The situation becomes more neutral. It feels more neutral to you. You know, you're not getting sucked up in the drama. You're not becoming a participant. And so that's really important, to be able to manage these negative thoughts and emotions. That is really important. So we observe our thoughts to just be present with them so that we're not becoming reactive to the toxic relationship, but that we're being mindful and reflective of the situation and our thoughts. So that's step two, is to really just be present with your own thoughts regarding that toxic situation. And so as we keep observing our thoughts as a third-party eyewitness, then we start to have more peace, more clarity, more understanding of the other person and their situation. We start to have more understanding. And when we start to have more understanding, that is when we start to have compassion. We actually start to have compassion for the toxic person because we have more clarity about where they're coming from. So for example, this mother, we might have an understanding of her own childhood, that she had a toxic childhood in her life. And because she had a toxic childhood, she was abused by her own parents. Now, she's doing that to her own daughter. It's a recycled behavioral pattern. And that's what happened in my own life, is that once I started to have more understanding of my father, I realized that my father was in just as much suffering and pain as I was. Why? Because my father's parents abused him as a child. He got the abuse when he was a child, and so when he became an adult, all he knew was abuse of his family. And so I started to really understand that my father was in his own suffering and pain, right? So once you start to understand other people's suffering and pain, that's when you start to have compassion for that other person. And that's when your thoughts can actually start to change. You will now start to have a story more of, I have compassion for her own suffering and pain because she's releasing that pain onto me. So that's what's happening when toxic people are becoming negative and spewing their toxicity onto others, is that they have to release that suffering and pain energy onto others. And naturally, they're going to do it onto the closest people around them, right? So that's the understanding that I started to have about my father, that he was in his own suffering and pain and releasing that pain energy onto us. And having that understanding made me have a lot more compassion for my father. Now, I'm not saying to you that you have to be staying in that toxic relationship. I mean, if somebody's beating you up, you don't have to stay in that toxic relationship, but you could have a compassion for them at a distance. I'm saying that we could have internal compassion for them even at a distance, and that compassion that we have is now broadcasting a different energetic signal to the world. And so when that person shows up the next time, they will feel a different energy from you. And as they feel a different energy from you, what's going to happen is they're going to do two things. They're either going to start behaving differently, or they're going to start disappearing from your life. And I have a beautiful example of this. Is one of our members was starting to have a lot of health issues. Well, she's been having a lot of health issues for many years, and her doctors told her it's because of stress that she's having this health issue. And what she realized was that the stress is all due to the toxic relationship with her mother. She has a very toxic relationship with her mother since she was a little child, and now she's an adult and she still has this toxic relationship with her mother. And her mother is constantly demeaning her, constantly. And we had a one-on-one private session, and after that session, she said to herself, you know, one of the things, that tip that I gave her was, your enemies are your greatest teacher, or the most toxic people in your life are your greatest teacher. What lesson, I asked her, are you learning from your toxic mother? What is the greatest lesson you are learning? So after that session, she decided to approach her mother differently. She decided to be patient with her mother and just listen to what her mother was saying. Normally, when her mother says something demeaning or something negative about somebody else, she would go into a mode of saying, why are you so negative, Mom? Why are you so negative? She was responding with kind of a criticism to her mother, and that never helped. So this time, the next time she got into a call with her mother, she decided to just listen and not say anything to her mother. Just listen and not say anything. And can you believe her mother started to calm her energy? That's what the member reported. Her mother actually started to calm her energy because her energy was different. The daughter's energy was different. And by the laws of the universe, when you put out a different energy, a different response comes. That's the laws of the universe, which is the law of attraction as well. So as you keep changing and becoming more peaceful in your energy, the toxic people that show up will be less toxic, or they will disappear altogether. So it's a cause and effect. It's a cause and effect. And so these are the reasons why we are never to change toxic people in our lives. We just allow them to be on their soul's path. And as we show up differently, they will either show up differently or they will disappear altogether. Okay, so that is the most important thing to remember. Okay, so these are the 3 general steps of what we need to do in order to really manage and control any toxic situations that we're in. So like I said before, in next week's video, I'm going to talk about actual practical tips and steps you can take to handle and manage toxic people and situations, along with a meditation that will allow you to really help with toxic relationships, really help you to manage that, because I really think we all need tools and modalities for this really important issue, because so many of us have toxic relationships in our lives, especially family members. And so look out for that video. And so if you like this video, please make sure to share it and subscribe to my channel. And I encourage you to join our Facebook community if you want deeper healing of your mind, body, and soul. And in that community, that is where we do all of our live healing meditations, as well as our live sessions where we discuss topics of grief, toxic relationships, loneliness, and other issues. And we also offer the private one-on-one counseling sessions on that platform. So please, if you want a deeper healing of your mind, body, and soul, ask to join our Facebook community. The link is below, which is facebook.com/groups/yin and yang living. facebook.com/groups/yin and yang living. And if you want to visit all of my spiritual and holistic living tips, just go to my website at yinandyangliving.com. Thank you. Namaste.